Listen to the people in the BSU stands. I'm a part of them. I have two friends through the ship. As plain as they can see, they want victory. They also want to tank. So what's going on? So keep your stick on the puck and don't lay down on your luck. Because BSU is my source for this one. They are a good group of Ranger fans that actually took me in. It's BSU and it's the New York Rangers. You gotta fight, Rangers fight. It's hell happening. We may have the longest cup drought, but I'm afraid the Leafs might take it over. Thank goodness for that. I am part of your gang. It's a Rangers. What a time. So anyway, if you don't know much about me, and I know a lot of you don't, is that I have dual fan citizenship with the NHL. It's the Leafs and the Rangers. I belong to a Leafs group and a Rangers group. But in the Rangers group, I actually have a better hierarchy than the Leafs group. But anyway, my official title for the BSU group is official researcher of historical facts and major annoyance, and a major in the annoyance army of Facebook. So anyway, you will meet one of the BSU members soon when but they said they would like to talk about the New York Rangers team that I put in my what if, and of course you see by the picture, he played for the 92 Rangers, John Erickson. So anyway, let's get down to business. The franchise history of the New York Rangers. So the New York Rangers were actually born out of necessity when Tex Rickard, who was one of the best promoters in history, found out about hockey. People with the New York Americans wanted to do hockey. Because the New York Americans, of course, took over for Hamilton, who basically struck because they weren't being paid enough. So when he saw the New York Americans play at Madison Square Garden and play well, he said, I want my own hockey team. So he decided to call it the Texas Rangers. Texas with T-E-X apostrophe S. Not the Texas Rangers, the law enforcement, or the Texas Rangers baseball team. So anyway, he hired Conn Smythe to try to get some job with the Rangers. So basically, Smythe built the Rangers up. The Cook brothers, Bill and Bund, Frank Boucher, Lauren Chabot, a lot of other Rangers. Ching Johnson, I would say, but I'm probably wrong. A lot of New York Rangers and all that. Unfortunately, the Rangers brass was upset that Conn Smythe refused to sign two-time scoring champion Babe Dye away. Smythe thought that Babe Dye was on the tail end of his career, which he was. So they basically fired him and gave him a severance package. Conn Smythe used that severance package with a few bets and got enough money with some partners to buy the Toronto Maple Leafs, to buy the Toronto franchise, which was almost slated for Philadelphia. So anyway, no hard feelings, I guess. But anyway, the Rangers did have a very good roster, and they were decent. In 1928, they got to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Montreal Maroons. Unfortunately, Lauren Chabot suffered a massive injury to the face, puck hit his face, and with no spare goaltenders, the Rangers were scrambling. There were a couple of players that they wanted. One of them was Joe Miller, who was with the New York Americans, but in those days you could try to swipe goalies from other teams. And there were a few other ones, but the Maroons, knowing that if they allowed those goalies, they might lose the Stanley Cup, said, fuck you, you got to do something else. Thankfully, Lester Patrick decided to strap on the pads. He basically told them, go out there and don't let me down. Make sure they don't shoot on me. And he did pretty well. He did give up a goal. However, the Rangers scored two, including one in overtime, to basically win that game and get the Stanley Cup. So the 1928 Stanley Cup would not have happened if it wasn't for Lester Patrick. Lester Patrick was a pioneer in the Pacific Coast Hockey League, a predecessor league way back in the day. So anyway, the New York Rangers got the Stanley Cup. And in 1932, they tried to get the Stanley Cup from the Toronto Maple Leafs. But the Leafs, with Conn Smythe as owner, took them out in this what they called the tennis series, 6-2, 6-4, 6-2. It was the best of five Stanley Cup finals back then, if you must know. 1933, the Rangers did get the revenge on the Leafs. I believe they won. No, sorry. I was going to say they won the Cup on April 9th, 1933. I was minus 52 years old. But no, that's wrong. That was when Ken Doherty did that six-tuple overtime goal for the Leafs against the Bruins. No, that was April 4th. I think they won the cup in April. Anyway, the Rangers were good in the 30s. They were decent. They had some great players. 1940, their team really got together. Odd Heller, the Caulfield brothers, Boucher wasn't part of that team back then. Alex Shabicki, Brian Hextall, who is Ron Hextall's grandfather. There's a lot of talk about the Rangers and all that. But so anyway, the 1940 New York Rangers um, won the Stanley Cup in overtime on a Brian Hextall goal at Maple Leaf Gardens to sink the Leafs. And that was the last time the Rangers had a cup for 54 years. Brian Hextall would always wonder if he would be the last Ranger to get a cup winning goal in his lifetime. And he did until he snapped in 1987. So the Rangers suffered a big problem. It was Second World War, and people were fleeing. Hockey players were fleeing to the army and all that. The Rangers got it worse, especially in 1944 when they only won 6 games out of 50, 638 and 639 and 5. They had a goalie by the name of Steve Basinski, the puck Gozinski. But I don't think that was 1942. He had one of the worst goals against average of all time. It was Ken McCauley, 1944, who suffered a glorious 15-0 loss to the Detroit Red Wings at the Olympia and all that. Only 2 people for the Red Wings. One of them was the goalie that didn't score a point. The Rangers were laughing stocks and all that. They couldn't do much. But in 1950, they took the laughing stock things and made them their own. Got to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Detroit Red Wings. Unfortunately, like many years in the playoffs before 1968, the Rangers would be forced to not play playoff games at Madison Square Garden because of the circus. The circus was a big draw in New York City, and hockey just wasn't. So anyway, the Rangers were basically kicked out of their arena after 2 games of the Stanley Cup Finals. Oh, wait a minute. I think they played at Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens for a couple of games, and then the rest of the series was at the Detroit Olympia. It would bite the Rangers in the butt, even though they put up a pair of double overtime goals, one by Don Bones Raleigh, if memory serves me right. They lost a double overtime on a Pete Bavanda goal over Chuck Rayner's shoulder or something like that. The Red Wings won the Stanley Cup in Game 7 in overtime. That's amazing. So anyway, the New York Rangers were really, and they weren't too happy about it. So practically, there were times that they needed some guidance. The Rangers, unfortunately, the rest of the 50s weren't really that good and all that. They were suffering through glove problems. They had Gump Worsley and Johnny Bower as goalies for the Rangers, who would be better off with other teams. Gump Worsley famously had it in for Coach Phil Watson, saying that Watson's lying that I have a beer belly. I drink scotch. And the Rangers are the team that give me the most trouble. So anyway, yeah. Gump Worsley was a decent goalie, but the Rangers just weren't good offensively. They famously lost 14-1 in 1957 to the Leafs. So the Rangers were laughingstocks, if you will. Kind of like the Boston Bruins in the 1960s. Anyway, in 1959, the Rangers actually had a playoff spot sewn up. Unfortunately, they talked crap about the Leafs, and Conn Smythe promised that the Leafs would somehow sneak past the Rangers and into that final playoff spot. And lo and behold, within 2 weeks, the Rangers were out of the playoffs and the Leafs were in the playoffs. One of the most famous stretch drives in history, and this happened 6 decades ago. So anyway, the Toronto Maple Leafs got to the Stanley Cup Finals that year. Weird. So anyway, the New York Rangers were building themselves up. They had a decent farm system and all that. They had Ed Jackman, they had Harry Howe, Rod Sherbert, Eddie Bathgate, Rod Seeley. They had a lot of good players in the 60s and all that, but they just couldn't get the playoff drive that they wanted. 1970 was famous because they were in a playoff hunt on the final day of the year against the Montreal Canadiens. And weird as it sounds, the tiebreak was goals scored. So the Rangers scored a lot of goals, and Montreal couldn't. So the Rangers got in the Stanley Cup playoffs. 1971 would mark a great time for the Rangers. They had some great players. They had the gag line of Hatfield, Rattel, and I'm blanking. Hatfield, Rattel, and someone else. Chabert, I guess. Yeah, Chabert. They had Brad Park on the back line with Harry Howe. They had Eddie Jackman in net. They were pretty well endowed. The Rangers took on the Leafs in a famous 1971 playoff series, the last time Rangers and Leafs would play in the playoffs. 2013 would have been the last if it wasn't for Leafs choking. But anyway, the Rangers were heavily favored. In Game 2, when they lost 4-1, Vic Hatfield earned my score, despite the fact that I was born 14 years later, that he threw Bertie Perron's face mask into the stands. Perron eventually got it back. It was weird seeing Bertie Perron as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So anyway, Perron couldn't play without his face mask, so Jacques Plante was put in. Yes, Jacques Plante was a Leaf. He was a Ranger too. Jacques Plante famously went in 1962 from the Habs to the Rangers for the rights of Gump Worsley. People forget that. Jacques Plante didn't help the Rangers one bit. Gump won a few cups with the Canadiens. So anyway, 1971. The Rangers, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Bob Nevin, former Leaf, who sunk the Leafs in Game 6 in overtime to win the Stanley Cup Series against the Leafs. The Rangers went on to the semifinals when they faced the Chicago Blackhawks in one of the most famous semifinals in history. Pete Stamkowski scored a famous triple overtime goal to force Game 7 against the Hawks at Chicago Stadium, but sadly Chicago won that game. Rangers licked their wounds and all that. But in 1972, they looked good. Unfortunately, they had problems. Sean Rattel got hurt. Brad Park got hurt in 72. They were not the same people, despite the fact the Rangers got to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Bruins. Unfortunately, Bobby Orr and Gary Cheevers would definitely haunt the Rangers in their nightmares, as the Rangers lost that series in 6 games. The Rangers came and went. 1975 was the year of one of the biggest trades in history. Them sending Brad Park to the Boston Bruins effectively for Phil Esposito. Brad Park did very decent in Boston. Phil Esposito did okay for the Rangers, but he wasn't the player he was with Boston, if you will, with the Rangers. So anyway, the Rangers trotted along. They did fine. 1978 was famous. On February 25th, at the Montreal Forum, the Habs had a 28-game unbeaten streak, 23 wins and 5 ties. They were dealing with the New York Rangers, who surprisingly decided to use Hardy Astrom in net. I have footage of that game. Of course, I can't put it up because I'm worried of copyright strikes. So anyway, the Rangers had their guy, and Hardy Astrom said he could beat the Habs in Montreal. Heck, he beat the Czech Republic in Prague. He beat the Russians in Moscow. And he even beat the Finns in Helsinki. He said this could be a piece of cake. Obviously, he couldn't beat the Canadians because Canada was so good. But Astrom did his job, and the Rangers won 6-3 to win, to snap that winning streak, that unbeaten streak. It's kind of strange seeing Astrom do so well, and then all of a sudden he goes to Colorado, is the Colorado Rockies' #1 goalie with Don Cherry at the helm, and he couldn't stop any shots. What the hell happened to him? Anyway, in 1979, the Rangers went on a magical playoff run. They took on the upstart New York Islanders in the semifinals, and they beat the Islanders in 6 games, shocking a lot of people, especially with the fact that the Islanders in 78 also had a great chance to make the Stanley Cup Finals, but they were shot down by the Leafs in the quarterfinals. So yeah, the Rangers got to the Stanley Cup Finals where they met the familiar foe Montreal Canadiens, who got off a tough Game 7 win over Boston themselves. So, the New York Rangers got to the Stanley Cup Finals. They won 5-2 in Game 1. They chased Ken Dryden away. It's the first time that Dryden was a member of the Habs, and he didn't even start a playoff game. And he didn't finish the playoff game. Buddy LaRocque finally got some playoff time in net. It's weird seeing Buddy LaRocque with 4 Stanley Cups rings. Of course, he's unfortunately dead. 1992, he died. So anyway, the Rangers had confidence. And heck, Montreal was going to switch from Dryden to LaRocque to start Game 2. A few things went against the Rangers. Number 1, Phil Esposito was pissed off that the Rangers didn't put their hotel away from Montreal because of the distractions. Espo's teammates were basically being greasy and wrestling naked. Yuck. And another thing was in the warm-ups for Montreal when Doug Reisfeld, catcher, actually shot the puck and accidentally injured by the Rock so badly that they had to put Dryden back in the net. And Dryden played like a house on fire and led the Habs to a 5-game series lead. Went over the New York Rangers. Looked like he was going to get a penalty shot goal. Nope, Richter saved him with that key save. Unfortunately, Game 5 was not the Rangers as they lost it. That third period was heavy with 8 goals scored in that period, but the Rangers did not win the cup. The Rangers did not win the cup in Game 6 either in Vancouver, so they had to win Game 7 on Tuesday, June 14th, 1994, a day of infamy, if you will. If you can forget Brian Leach's goal, when he's like, shoot the puck, shoot the puck. There you go, you shoot the puck, you score. 3-1, making it 1-0. Mark Messier's goal, I can't remember who the second guy was, but anyway, the Rangers won the game 3-2. But no thanks to Mike Richter, who made a few saves and had shots ring off the post from Lafayette and Jelena. The Rangers finally got their Stanley Cup. 54 years of curses was finally over. New York can now die in peace. 95 was a different story. The 95 Rangers, there were a lot of changes. Mike Keenan is out the door. It was pathetic. So anyway, in 1995, the Rangers climbed into 8th place and would face the Quebec Nordiques, the best team in the Eastern Conference. And somehow, in some way, the Rangers got together and beat the Nordiques and sent Quebec out of the league and into Colorado, of course, because from there, Quebec switched to Colorado. So anyway, in that regard, the Rangers got taken down by the Flyers in 5 games in that series. 96 was a different thing also, as the 96 Rangers actually were down 2-0 at home to the Montreal Canadiens, but came back with 4 straight wins. That'll teach you, Tremblay, to get rid of Patrick Waugh when you need him the most. 97, the Rangers did one step better. They got to the Stanley Cup semifinals. They took care of the Panthers. They got Wayne Gretzky after Toronto basically said, that's not going to fill seats, even though it's in a sold-out arena. Fuck you, Steve Stavro. Fuck you royally. So anyway, Gretzky scored a playoff hat trick against the Panthers. Esa Tikkanen scored a couple of overtime goals in that series. The Rangers beat the Devils in 5 games, shocking everyone, including myself, and Adam Graves with that overtime goal in Game 5. And then all of a freaking sudden, you have the Rangers face the Flyers and get beaten by the Flyers yet again. The Rangers, after that, went on a tear of playoff misery that finally ended after the lockout of 2004-2005. Yeah, they didn't make any playoff appearances past 97 until after the strike. Strike ended a year. But the Rangers did well. They took out the Atlanta Thrashers. That's good. They put the Sabres on notice in 2007, even though they didn't win the series. They had a 3-1 series lead in 2009, but choked it to the Capitals. Undeservedly so. 2012, they went on a massive roll. Unfortunately, though, they had a couple of Game 7s to deal with. Ottawa and Washington. They had to win in New Jersey to force a Game 7 on home ice, but failed. Thank you very much, Adam Henrique, for your overtime goal. That ruined us. And then the Rangers 2013, they came back from 3-1 down against the Capitals and sent them home unhappy, but lost in the second round in Boston. 2014, they shocked a lot of people, especially after Martin St. Louis' mother passed away. They were down 3-1 to the Penguins in the 2014 playoffs, but came roaring back to win 3 straight, as Martin St. Louis played with a purpose. And that purpose ruined Montreal as well. And if you can forget Chris Kreider bumping into Carey Price, hurting Price, and putting Montreal Sky in net, Dustin Tokarski, who I personally hated because in 2008 he ruined Kitchener's chances to win the Memorial Cup on home ice as he won for the Spokane Chiefs. The trophy fell apart. Karma, bitch. So anyway, the Rangers beat Montreal in the conference finals and got to the Stanley Cup against the LA Kings. I was happy because I was like, maybe the Rangers can take down the Kings because, I mean, the Kings don't look like they're going to win. Boy, was I wrong. And 3 games in which you blow 2-0 leads and 2-goal leads. That just ruins you. And the Rangers lost in Game 5 in overtime thanks to Alec Martinez. So anyway, the Rangers came back from 3-1 down against Washington in 2015. Got past Pittsburgh and then got taken out in Game 7 at home by the Tampa Bay Lightning. They blew a chance to get to the Stanley Cup against the Blackhawks, what should have happened in 2014. But the Rangers fucked it up. So anyway, the Rangers have had a few off and on years, but in 2019 they basically rebuilt the team and got themselves the number 2 pick, which is Capo Caco. And although they're not doing so well right now, as of this taping, rest assured they could do a lot better. So let's talk about the 1992 New York Rangers. Actually, let's is not the verb. I won't talk about the 92 Rangers. So let's just hand it over to Jim Schmiedeberg and see what he thinks about the 1992 New York Rangers and see what he has to say. So the New York Rangers take on the Boston Bruins. Remember, the 92 Rangers got shocked in the second round by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Of course, on that long center ice goal. So the Rangers take on the Bruins in the conference finals. Of course, the Rangers did win the President's Trophy, so that's why they are the home team. And the Bruins went in overtime. They scored a couple of quick goals. Joe Juno and Brent Ashton. Then Tony Amonte, before the Rangers traded him to Chicago, made a 2-1. Adam Oates made a 3-1. Brent Ashton made a 4-1. Messier and Amonte put up goals to make it 4-3. Stefan Quintal from the point. Richter replaced by Van Beesbrook. Mike Gardner scored a power play goal to make it 5-4. Stephen Leach made it 6-4 Bruins. Mark Messier scored again to make it 6-5. Adam Graves at 15:31 made it 6-6. Stephen Leach scored a power play goal when Buka booms in the box. Make it 7-6. And then Messier, with 30 seconds left, gets a hat trick and decides to score the big goal. Nothing much in the first overtime. Mark Hardy and Stefan Quintal both get penalties. Joe Cirelli got penalty for the 92 Rangers. And even though the Bruins got a penalty with Nevin Marquardt, Cam Neely scores the winning goal from Oates and Juno at 8-7, but 18-14 of the second overtime. It almost went 3 overtimes. Moog, Messier, Oates, the 3 stars. Moog, geez, you give up 7 goals and you're the first star? How? Should have been probably Ashton or Leach or even Cam Neely be a star, not Adam Oates. Man. Oates, I know, had 3 assists, but still. So the Rangers decided to do the switch and go with Van Beesbrook. After all, he did help him do okay. The plan worked like a charm. The Rangers win 5-2. Messier scored first. Then James Patrick, the legendary James Patrick, before he went to Hartford. Vladdy Rusika with a power play goal with Graves in the box. But Messier, Patrick, and Messier another hat trick, and he gets rid of Moog, who's now replaced by Lemlin. Adam Oates makes it 5-2, and that's it. Messier, Patrick, and Lemlin. Lemlin gave up 25 shots, and yet he's the 3rd star. Couldn't find a 3rd star. Messier and Patrick, not even Mike Gardner, pair of assists. So at 1-1, they head to Game 3 at the Boston Garden. In the conference final, and the Rangers strike with a 7-6 win. Bruins do take a 3-1 lead. Sergei Nemchinov scored for the Rangers, but Doris Rusika and Joey Juno made it 3-1. Mark Messier made it 3-2 before James Patrick made it 3-3, and then the Rangers give up a pair of goals from Peter Doris and Steve Leach. James Patrick made it 5-4 early in the 3rd period. Then Mike Gardner tied it at 5. Cam Neely made it 6-5 Bruins. No Neely or Bukaboom. They both went to the box. Messier scores a 6-on-5 goal to make it 6-6. And then Adam Graves comes out of nowhere to score in the last 20 seconds to make it 7-6. So the Rangers win again. Moog not doing so well. James Patrick, the 1st star. Amazing. Gardner and Messier. James Patrick, a 5-point night. Nicely done. Rangers up 2-1 in the series. And they win again, 6-3. So the Bruins are in deep trouble. James Patrick scored for the Rangers to make it 1-0. Messier, Gardner, Messier made it 4-0 Rangers. Juno or with Glenn Wesley make it 4-2. Peter Doris made it 4-3, but unfortunately, after Juno got caught for roughing, Messier scored a power play goal to get another hat trick, his 3rd hat trick in 4 games, and Moog is replaced by Lemlin. Messier ices it with his 4th goal of the night. Man, Messier is hot. Lemelin only gives up 7 shots after he comes into the game, but in the end, he does not pick up the loss. That was Anthony Mooksville, Messier, Garner, Patrick. They head to New York. Lemelin's done very well, but the Bruins think that the Rangers are weak. Nope. Fantastic, but not weak. Ray Bourque scored the first goal for the Bruins. Then Paul Broden, remember him? Made it 1-1. Mark Messier made it 2-1. Steve Leach made it 2-2. Tony Amonte on the power play made it 3-2. Joe Judo made it 3-3. And the first time in a while, I've done a series that nobody got ejected because of a dumb penalty. Vladimir Rusika did get a 2-man advantage power play goal with Gardner and Chris King in the box, both for charging. Sergei Uchino started at 4. And even though the Chino scored in the first minute of the third period, the Bruins couldn't do a thing about it. They were badly outshot in the third period. John Van Beesbrook, the hero. Messier, Leach, and Nachinov. So Mark Messier has led the Rangers to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Chicago Blackhawks. Amazing but true. So that's make sure that the Blackhawks get added on. So the road team, Blackhawks really didn't look as hot as I thought they would be. But anyway, playoff. Game 1 sees the Rangers beat the shit out of the Hawks 8-3. Mark Messier, a 2-man power play goal after Tony Horacek and Chris Chelios go in the box. So Messier from Patrick and Leach. Messier scored on the second power play with a big goal, 2-0. Larmer scored for the Hawks. Adam Graves made it 3-1. I guess I should have talked about the 92 Bruins roster. Oh well. Sergei Nemchinov made it 4-1 Rangers. Third period, Chris Chelios put one in the net. Nemchinov made it 5-2 Rangers. Ray LeBlanc decided to come in the net. Keenan is mad. But he gets up 3 goals. Brian Leach, Mike Gardner, and James Patrick. Rob Brown for the Blackhawks, but that was not important. Ray LeBlanc was terrible. Messier, Nemchinov, and Leach. Your 3 stars of the game. Blackhawks decided to use Dominic Hasek because I'm impatient with Belfort. The plan fails, and the Rangers win 3-2 in overtime. It wasn't that bad. Tony Amonte made it 1-0. Jeff Bukaboom gets ejected for elbowing, so he's out of the game. Ty Domi has to serve the penalty. Then Steve Smith gets in trouble for a headbutt, so he gets ejected. Mike Blizzard has to serve a penalty. And then there was a big brouhaha. Stu Grimson gets 17 minutes in penalties. John Ogrodnik only gets 5. And then later on, Matteau and Chris King get coincidental penalties. Brian Noonan gets himself in trouble. 10-minute misconduct for unsportsmanlike conduct. Noonan would go on to play for the 94 Rangers. They play for the 92 Hawks. Chris Chelios scored to make it 2-1. And then Steve Thomas, final minute, made it 2-2. And in overtime, Mark Messier from Graves and Gardner. How about that Mark Messier? So Steve Smith and Jeff Bukaboom both getting ejected, 1 guy each. Graves, Hasek, Chelios. Hasek does pretty well for himself. But look at the penalties. Great. Steve Smith, 15 minutes of calls. Brian Noonan, 10 minutes. Stu Grimson, 17. Bukaboom, 15 minutes. So he decides to put Hasek in game 3, Keenan does, because of his great effort. The plan backfires as the Rangers win 7-2. Mike Gardner scored a big goal. Mike Peluso gets ejected for cross-check, so he's gone. 2-man power plays. Sergei Nemchinov scored. Oh, by the way, Matteau's in the box for high sticking. Matteau would play for the 95 Rangers. Tony Amonte made it 3-0. Brian Marchman made 3-1. Jeff Bukaboom gets an instigating penalty and gets 17 minutes in calls. Stefan Matteau gets only 5 minutes for fighting. Marchman and Graves go at each other. Paul Broden made it 4-1. Mark Messier made it 5-1. Hasek is out for LeBlanc. Mike Gardner made it 6-1 Rangers. Ronak made it 6-2, and then Messier 7-2. So, man, can you believe it? What? Blue Soul zooming right up. Gardner, Messier, Van Beesbrook. Boy, John Van Beesbrook, I tell you. So, anyway, great job by the Rangers. They're up 3-0. Ed Belfour is going to come back in the net. So the Rangers thought they had it, but they lose 6-5 in overtime. Brent Sutter scored to make it 1-0. Brian Leach made it 1-1. Steve Larmer come back with a 2-1 goal. Nemchinov 2-2. Adam Graves made it 3-2. And Jeremy Roenick made it 3-3. So what a first period this was. And then Adam Graves made it 4-3. So after Bookaboo went off for high sticking, Brian Noonan tied the game at 4. Mike Gardner made it 5-4 on a key goal. Keith Brown tied it at 5. And in overtime, Jeremy Roenick, thanks to Joe Sorella being in the box for high sticking, made it 6-5. So Jeremy Roenick saves the day for Red Belfort. Roenick, Messier, Graves. But have no fear, the Rangers still are going to win. And they still keep Van Beesbrook. I mean, it is 3-1 after all. And looky, who's going to play some hooky? Hooky is in hockey. The New York Rangers did win. So 13 out of 28 teams got their happy ever after in the NHL, breaking the record by baseball. Baseball had 10. Football had 7. I believe football had 7. Yeah, football had 7. Now hockey has 13. New record. So 8-4 your final score. Jeff Bookaboo made it 1-0. Steve Larmer tied. Mike Gardner 2-1. Messier on the power play, thanks to Larmer's penalty, made it 3-1. Steve Thomas made it 3-2 for the Hawks. Adam Creighton made it 3-3. And then after a fight between Keith Brown and Adam Graves, Doug Waite made it 4-3. Remember him? He used to play for the Rangers. Mark Messier scores a goal that forces Belfort to be yanked from the net. JR makes it 5-4. Brian Leach makes it 6-4. Then Adam Graves scores a pair of goals in the third period. Game over, 8-4. So bad luck to the 92 Blackhawks that had to deal with Adam Creighton, Steve Thomas, Marchment, Chelio, Steve Smith, Rod Buskas, JR, Keith Brown, Michel Goulet, Conroy, Larmer, Matteau, Brent Sutter, Peluso, Robbie Brown, Tony Horishak, Stu Grimson, and Brian Noonan. The Rangers had Jeff Bookaboo, Mark Messier, Adam Graves, Mike Gardner, Brian Leach, James Patrick, Mark Hardy, Joe Sorella, John Ugrenick, Roenick, Doug Waite, Sergei Nugino, Tony Amonte, Jan Erickson, Paul Broden, Randy Moeller, Chris King, Jay Wells, Ty Yomi, Joey Kosher. So Messier, the first start of the game, he gets the Conn Smythe easily. Leach and Gardner, 2 and 3. So Messier's goals have been fantastic. I mean, he got 5 points in one game. So the New York Rangers ended up winning the game. What a time to be a New York Rangers fan. And I know Jim, when he says the immortal words, "Shut up, Cutter!" It has to be true. And now I will shut up.